Hey guys, Pandrax here with a new World of Warcraft video. It has been nearly 10 years, as you can see here, since I made my Mr. Pandaria class race guide. That's insane to think that MOP was 10 years ago. What a great expansion, soon to come, hopefully. Obviously, this is Cataclysm, which, as we know from the surveys that have gone out and the success of classic World of Warcraft in itself, Blizzard's definitely going to be releasing next year. So what I want to do is hit you guys with some content so you're prepared going into the expansion. You know what class you want to play, you know what race you want to play, you know how the professions are looking, you know how the raids are looking, the PvP seasons, everything. I'm going to load you guys with information. So if you're interested in Cataclysm, the upcoming World of Warcraft Classic expansion, please subscribe, hit the bell notification. I'll be uploading a ton of videos to YouTube, everything Cataclysmic related. Let's start out with human, guys. If you're planning to PvP and you want to play Alliance, and you want to play a warrior, a paladin, a hunter, a rogue, a priest, a death knight, a mage, or a warlock, any of their available specs, and you are planning on maining PvP, and PvE is maybe just a side activity for you, then you should pick human. As far as PvE goes, they're not so hot. Sure, you get a racial trinket, the same as you do in PvP, but it just doesn't have the same implication in PvE as it does in PvP. It can work in some real niche situations. Other than your racial trinket that you get, you also get some increased spirit, which is you get bonus to reputation gains, which again, depending on what kind of player you are, that might be great for you. For the majority of people, it's not too hot. Increase your expertise with swords and maces. Again, more PvE than it is PvP, but again, not a massive deal. These are very, very small changes that don't really affect the gameplay too much. But the racial trinket is insane. It lets you run 2 DPS trinkets in PvP. It's really good. It's okay in some niche situations in PvE, but you wouldn't pick human based on their racials for PvE. You would, however, pick humans for PvP and for the way that they look. I think they look good in every type of armor for every class. I feel like Blizzard designs the armor on the human and then it just kind of gets put onto other classes, other races, sorry, and you know, some of them don't look too hot in some of the gear, but on humans, it just looks right. It just does. So if you want to pick humans based on the way that they look, great. If you want to pick humans for the meta PvP pick, great. But don't go picking them for PvE because you think they're hot shit, because they're not. Let's move on to the dwarfs. On to dwarf then, guys. Let's have a look at the available classes to start with. You literally have everything other than druid, warrior, paladin, hunter, rogue, priest, death knight, shaman, mage, and even warlock is available for the dwarf to play. As far as your racials go, your main racial is obviously stone form. This gives you a 10% damage reduction, also removes all disease, bleed, and poison effects. As far as the PvP implications go for that racial, the only class that I can see really benefiting from that is a rogue in a very, very niche situation, again, where you're trying to get a re-stealth and you've got warriors rend on you, you've got feral bleeds on you, or you've got another rogue on you. You can remove the bleeds, you can get a clean re-stealth, but again, it's such a niche situation. You know, if you're Alliance and you're looking at playing a rogue, then like I said before, you just go human. But if you really like the way dwarf looks, you can make it work no matter what spec you are. It's irrelevant, okay? That's the main point of this video that I really want to drill into, you guys. If you like the way that it looks, then just play it, because there's nothing worse than having this character in the middle of your screen for as long as you've got slash played and you just don't like the way that it looks, but it's the meta pick, right? You still just won't enjoy yourself. Now, as far as PvE goes, they're a great tank, man. Like stone form, 10% damage reduction, as well as removing bleeds, disease, and poison effects, as I said. So if you're looking at playing a prop warrior, prop paladin, or a blood death knight, and you want to play an alliance, dwarf's a solid pick if you like the look of it. You also get increased critical strike chance with guns, which again, you're not really benefiting from that much out of a hunter using a gun, so it's very niche. Resistance to frost damage, it's no big deal, but again, it could help in some niche situations as a tank. You find additional archaeology fragments and survey faster. Now, for the new profession that's upcoming in this expansion, I'm going to make a video on archaeology. So this race is the best if you're looking at focusing on archaeology. If that is like a main focus for you, then obviously this race will work great. But again, that's a niche audience that's into that, but it's always there. And you get increased expertise with maces, which again is no big deal. But if you like the look of it, I love the way dwarfs look personally. I think they look like tiny little bodybuilders. They look fucking awesome. It's like Greg Doucette if he was a World of Warcraft character. And yeah, I like it, man. So I'm well into this race personally. I love it. I always have done, and I play it no matter what. Whether it's meta or not, I play it just because I like the way that it looks. Moving on to Night Elf. So with these big old boys, you can play a warrior, a hunter, rogue, a priest, a death knight, a mage, and a druid. Main racial is obviously shadow meld. This thing's fucking great. Like, don't get me wrong, it's amazing in PvP for rogues and druids. It drops combat, which allows you to get a re-stealth in this expansion. It does drop combat. As well as that, it also negates an incoming spell. So if a warlock casts a chaos spell on you, let's say, it's flying towards you, and you shadow melt at the right time, it will completely negate the damage from that spell, which again is insane. It's a very high skill cap thing. Again, it's a very niche thing, but it works really well. And as far as the shadow melt re-stealth thing goes, it's super easy to just make a macro, right? That's /cast shadow melt, /cast stealth, /cast prowl, whichever one you are, a druid or a rogue, and you can get free re-stealth. That shit works amazing. Now the thing is, in this expansion as a rogue, the whole re-stealth and opening thing, it's not that hot if you've not got shadow dance. And if you've got shadow dance, you don't need to re-stealth to do your burst window, so it's not that big of a deal. Humans are still better as a rogue in PvP than night elves are. It is pretty close. If you like night elf, then you can run night elf and still be like pretty fucking meta, but just know that when the human hooks you in a stun lock and shadow dances on you, because he's got the double DPS trinket, he's going to pump a lot more than what you are. You get a free re-stealth so you can reopen, but again, without the shadow dance thing, it's not that great. For druids, it's fucking phenomenal. They work great as druids. In PvE, shadow melt, you know, it's a very niche thing, but as I keep saying to you guys, if you like the look of night elf, then you can play night elf as any class and you can make it work in PvE. It's no drama. If you're in some cutting edge guild, they're probably not going to like you so much. On night elf, obviously if we're talking about playing a druid, then now we have Worgen as an option, and Worgen brings 1% crit chance, which is just more meta for PvE than night elf is. Taking a look at the other racials, guys, we have more difficult to hit. It does just that, makes you more difficult to hit. You get Wisp Form while it's dead for faster movement speed. Might work well if you're leveling, but if you're dying a lot while you're leveling in Cataclysm, then you're pretty fucking trash. Let's be honest, like, it's not a super hard leveling expansion. This definitely isn't like the hardcore challenge in vanilla or nothing like that. It's pretty easy. It's nice though, it's relaxed. Again, I'm going to cover a video on that. It's a lot better than you guys might think it's going to be. I know a lot of people are hating on the new content and stuff, but yeah, like I say, video coming on that. You get resistance to nature damage, which again is just like a meh thing, and you get faster movement while stealthed. That's called elusiveness, and it also has something that it doesn't tell you on there, which is it decreases the chance that enemies will see you while shadow melted, but it also decreases the chance that enemies will see you whilst you're stealthed, so it actually gives you very good stealth. But again, humans for rogues still come out on top, unfortunately. However, for PvP, this is the best spec for druid available on Alliance. It's definitely better than Worgen as far as PvP goes for a druid. Okay guys, on to gnomes now, and gnomes available classes are warriors, rogues, priests, death knight, mage and warlocks. Now as far as their ratios go, obviously gnome's main racial is the same as it always has been. It's escape artist. Now it's instant cast, unlike in earlier expansions when it had a cast time. It removes slows, snares, root effects, and just lets your character run free again. The only implication it's viable in really in PvP is for warrior. It works for everybody, but the only thing that it's really viable on is warrior, and it's kind of always been the case where you'll see some like multi-rank ones that are just run like a gnome warrior, and it's like, what the fuck? But this is why, and in this expansion, warriors suffer from a certain talent, and what the talent does is it allows you to use charge in combat, but it also makes charge and intercept share a cooldown, which is kind of fucked because it limits your mobility. Now you have got heroic leap in this expansion, but it's on a 1 minute cooldown, so you've got charge and leap and that's it. And so when you're getting snared and you're getting nova by frost mages and you're just getting spammed with slows, like as an example, rogues have got a 70% slow that's just on their auto attacks. All you've got as a warrior is hamstring, which requires you to use a global cooldown. So trying to stick to melee like rogues, which is super elusive in this expansion, they're hard to kill anyway. They've got so many defensive cooldowns that are amazing, and they've got constant recoup ticking away on them. They're really hard to stick to. So you having the ability to just get back on top of them. It really does help from time to time. Now, is it the meta? Is it the best pick? No, obviously not. Again, it goes to the humans. But if you like the way that Gnome looks, it works, man. It's great. I mean, over melee, obviously, we're looking at rogues. They don't really need escape artists. They're an escape artist. Just that's like the class, right? It is an escape artist. And as far as Death Knights go, Death Knights have got a great kit, man, for just like taking care of themselves and bringing enemies to them. So it's pretty specific to warriors in PvP. Like I say, it's very niche. And let's have a look at their other racials. You get an increased mana pool, you get resistance to arcane damage, you get an engineering skill increase, and you get increased expertise with dagger and small swords. As far as the gnomes go, this isn't a race that you're going to pick up because it's meta in any given part of the game, because it just isn't. It works. You can make it work. If you like the way gnome looks, play a gnome, man. I think they look pretty dope. Moving on to Draenei's, guys, my least favorite race for the Alliance, just because I don't like the way they look personally, and it is the kind of race that you would pick for aesthetics as far as PvP goes. For PvE, not so much, but we'll get into that in a second. I don't think they work well as melee, because for me, the only gender for this race that I can really stomach is female. I think females look pretty cool, but as melee, look what they do to this sword. This sword is huge. Look at the size of it. And then you put it on a female and it's literally like a toothpick in comparison. I don't like that. I think that's dumb. The female human, if you look how big the sword is. The sword's literally huge. It's the same size as it is on a male, pretty much. So I don't know why they toned it down so much on a female Draenei. I think it looks so much cooler when you've got like a tiny little petite chick that's running around with a huge two-hander rather than a toothpick, personally. So I can't really get over that. Now, they work well as casters aesthetically, in my opinion, and I mean with their racials as well, as we'll come to find out in a second. But as far as available classes go, you have the warrior, you have the paladin, hunter, priest, death knight, shaman, and mage, all playable by this race. As far as their racials go, you get dual crafting skill increase, you get the gift of Naru, which is may heal self or others over time. It's a nice little hot effect you can chuck on people. That is your main racial ability. Now, as far as a passive racial ability goes, they've got a really solid passive, which is a chance to hit with melee and spells increase. So it just gives you a % hit chance, and it gives it to your party as well, which is great for raids, like I say. And as far as shamans go, you're always going to be wanted for bloodlust or heroism, and to be able to bring that as well as a hit % chance increase is just great. You're going to just be more wanted, right? They also get resistant to shadow damage, but again, that's just a meh little flavor thing that's thrown in there because these are supposed to be like the good guys of the light. So not really my cup of tea, as I've said. In PvP, they've got minimal implication. Gift of Naru's such a meh little dot. Over time, it's no big deal, really. You know, if somebody throws that on them, it's not like, oh my god, there's no chance we can kill him, he's unstoppable, he's got that hot ticking on him. It's very minor. PvE, it offers you a nice little support thing that you can just throw around to people. Maybe a DPS and a rage took a little bit of damage, and so's everybody else. You can just chuck a gift of Naru on somebody, be that nice guy, and come up on the healing meters at the end, but as a DPS at least. But other than that, it's no big deal, honestly. You're mainly there for the hit % chance that you bring to the raid. So to me personally, as far as PvP goes, it's definitely more of a this is something that I like the look of kind of race. And as far as PvE goes, it's pretty solid because you bring the hit chance. So it's definitely a viable pick for PvE if you want to play any of the classes that are lit up on the left. Now moving on to the Worgens, guys, let's have a look at their available classes real quick. You can play warrior, hunter, rogue, priest, death knight, mage, warlock, and druid, which is a solid amount of classes. It's only 2 classes that you can't play as this race, so if you're into this race, you've got a lot of classes to pick from. As far as their racials go, you get a movement speed increase. That's pretty much their main racial. It's pretty nice. It's like a rogue sprint, honestly. It's not game changing or anything, but it's a nice little quality of life, and you're going to level up quicker with it. You can just get around a little bit quicker. It's going to add mobility to classes that wouldn't normally have a movement speed increase, so it's pretty nice for that, honestly. You get crit chance increase. I believe it's just 1% flat, which is really nice actually. So again, for like PvE and even PvP, crit chance 1%. It's nice if your class is crit focused class or spec. Resistant to nature and shadow damage. Again, these things are kind of meh at this point in the game. They're no big deal, but it's there. And you get a skinning skill and speed increase. So if you're looking at focusing on skinning and you're that kind of gamer that's into that, then this is definitely the best race for that. Something it doesn't mention there is that you also get the ability to run wild, in quotation marks, which is basically where you don't need a mount. You can just go down on all fours, you channel it like you would to cast your mount, and then you can just sprint around on all fours, so you don't actually have to use a mount, and that will update as you level up your mount training. So when you've got your 100% mount, you'll run at 100% movement speed on all fours, which I think is pretty cool. And it's also pretty cool as a druid, because it's like you never need a mount. You've got your flight form, and then you've got your running wild form, where you're down on all fours sprinting around. It looks dope, honestly. I kind of like the way it looks. It's a little bit clunky at times, but I don't know, I rate it. So as far as this race goes, is it like the most meta thing that you can pick? Definitely not. But again, if you like the way that it looks, you can 100% make this thing work. You get an extra sprint, you've got 1% flat crit increase, and you can skin quicker. That's kind of what this race offers. You can also customize 2 different versions of yourself. This is more of like a transmog thing, honestly. It's just a visual. So you can have a human form and a worgen form, but just note that the second that you go in combat in your human form, you'll instantly transform back into your worgen form. The animation of switching is pretty cool. They did a good job on this, honestly. It really feels right for the race. And I know a lot of people are into this race, so maybe this is the race for you. Moving on to the horde now, guys. We're going to start out with orcs. The available classes for orcs are warrior, hunter, rogue, death knight, shaman, mage, and warlock. As far as the ratios go, not much has changed. You get resistance to stun effects, it's great. You get unused trinket essentially with bloodlust, which will scale with attack damage or spell power depending on what class you're playing on, so that's great. Damage done by pets increase, which is obviously great for hunters and unholy DKs, and increase expertise with axes and fist weapons, which is a minor, but it's there. This race overall is solid for PvP and PvE. This is a good thing about orcs, man. So their counterpart, which is obviously the human, you get double DPS trinket and you still got your racial to use as a trinket. You essentially get the same thing with orcs, except you get double unused trinket, so you're a lot more bursty when you want to be, because on a human, if you're trying to line up the stars for PvP for your complete burst, you're going to have an unused trinket and you're going to have a proc based trinket. You've got to wait for that proc trinket to proc, then use your unused trinket as well as your cooldowns for your go. As an orc, you can just have it macroed in to use your big go with your DPS trinket and your racial, and it's more on demand burst. Orcs are solid, man. Resistance to stun effect is great, because in this expansion you're going to see a ton of ferals, you're going to see a ton of rogues. So resistance stun effect's always great, because there's nothing that fucks up a rogue save more than fucking up that rogue's entire rotation, because they're so used to how much energy they've got and how many abilities they can fit in within their stun lock windows. So as an orc, you get that resist, the stun resist, which basically gives you 15% shorter duration on stuns. So they're so used, like I say, to every other race of fitting X amount of ambushes in, the shadow dance in their kidney before they have to cheap shot. And then versus an orc, it's completely different, and it really does fuck them up. Like a professional rogue, good fucking rogue, it's going to make no difference. They already know what to use against you. But a lot of rogues that are going to open on you are not going to know how to deal with orcs. And even when they do know how to deal with an orc, it's still more of a pain in the arse to deal with an orc as a rogue than it is any other race. So you want to fuck a rogue's tail, roll an orc. Damage done by pets increase, like I say, it's great for hunters and it's great for DKs. So as far as PvP goes, it's a solid race, and as far as PvE goes, it's a fucking solid race, man. Like, this race is just brilliant. So if you can play any of those classes on the left there, and you are playing Horde, you're going to struggle to find anything better than an orc for any of those, as far as Horde goes. Moving on to undead now, guys, and as an undead, you can play warrior, you can play hunter now, rogue, priest, death knight, mage, and warlock. And as far as their racials go, obviously their main racial is Will of the Forsaken. Now the issue with Will of the Forsaken is obviously it removes fear, sleep, and charm effects. That's great, but it also puts your main PvP trinket on a 30-second cooldown. And so let's say, for example, you're facing a warlock rogue, right? And the warlock fears you, as you're just an off target, is just fearing you, and you use Will of the Forsaken and they see that, the rogue can just swap to you, kidney shot you, smoke bomb you, shadow dance, bam, GG, good game, you can't trinket it. your trinket is basically nil for 30 seconds. So it's got a plus side to it, but it's also got its negatives, which you don't see that in a lot of other races. You just get the plus without the negativity of it. And I get why they've nerfed the undead. I get why they've nerfed the undead racials time and time again, but honestly, I'm not really too keen on this state of it. I like it when it's just separate to PvP trinket, and it's just harder to fear and fuck with undead characters. I prefer it that way personally. You also obviously get Cannibalize, which is may consume corpse to regen health and mana, which is great in some really clutch situations in PvP. But again, these are very particular niche situations. It's there for leveling up, but no matter what class you're leveling up on, your downtime's minimal in Cataclysm. So to sit there and channel a full Cannibalize is, again, we're talking very niche situations. Underwater breathing increase, I like that. I've played undead for years, and let me tell you something, when you switch to another when you switch to another race, it feels weird having to keep an eye on your breath and coming up so often, honestly. And obviously also you've got resistance to shadow damage, which is just another meh thing, but it's there. For PvE, they bring 0. For PvP, they bring a little bit of something, but it ain't too hot. As an example, you wouldn't play an undead warrior really because you've got berserker rage. You would play an undead warrior because they look dope as fuck. That's why you play it. So it's another one of those classes that's an aesthetic. It's another one of those races that's an aesthetic race, not a meta race. And that stands for PvP and PvE. Moving on to Tauren now, guys, and the available classes for this race is Warrior, Paladin, Hunter, Priest, Death Knight, Shaman, and Druid. And as far as the racials go, obviously their main racial is War Stomp, which is may stomp, stunning nearby opponents. It's an AoE stun, it's great, it doesn't DR anything else, it's a very short cast time, and it works well in PvP for any of the classes that you can see on the left. There's always something that every one of those classes can do with that time that the stun gives you. You can use it as an interrupt, let's say. You can use it to gain some distance and then charge as a warrior. You can use it to gain some distance and start kiting again as a hunter. As a druid, it's fantastic because you can use it to cast a cyclone and entangling roots, a fast heal. Same with the shaman, you can get a fast heal off. And these situations where things are coming in real clutch, you're there. It's solid, man. It really is. It always has been. It's a great race for any of those classes as far as PvP goes. Now, in terms of PvE, it works solid as a tank because of the next ratio, which is maximum health increased. It works really well as a bear tank. It's easily obviously the best bear tank in the game. It works really well as a prop pally or a prop warrior or a blood DK, where the blood DK's healing is percentage based. It's solid, man. It really is. It works really well for them, and it fits the race really well because you're a big old meaty boy. It's solid. I really rate it. I love the way it looks aesthetically. I just think they look cool. I don't think they look too hot as casters, but each to their own, right? You get herbalism skill and speed increase, which again is great, especially if you're a druid. You can fly around and do that shit all day. And you get resistant to nature damage, which again is a minor, but it's there. So for PvP, solid. For PvE as a tank, solid. Anything else, they don't bring it. If you're planning on playing a DPS in PvE as a Tauren, it's not there, but it's a minor, man. Again, you know, if we used to play a warrior and Tauren, and you're going to play an arms warrior and pump on the meters, you're better off being an orc. But if you like the way Tauren looks, you can still play Tauren, and you can still top the DPS meters. So again, it's about what you like the look of in the center of your screen, because it's going to be there for as long as you've got Slash played. Moving on to Trolls now, guys, and your available classes for this race is Warrior, Hunter, Rogue, Priest, Death Knight, Shaman, Mage, Warlock, and Druid. The only thing that you can't play is Paladin, which is great because, man, what a ratio they bring. Berserk. Increase attack and casting speed. This gives you 20% increased casting speed. So for a shaman, a mage, a warlock, a shadow priest, a boomkin, this race is fantastic for PvE. Now, in terms of PvP, It's not the best. If I'm going to play a druid, for example, I'm going to take the war stomp over the increased casting speed, because I know that war stomp's going to come in clutch a lot more than it is me going to be able to pump out 20% faster on a 15-second duration. So they still work though. They're still solid in PvP, and they're really solid in PvE. It also gives you melee haste as well if you pop that as a melee, so it's going to let you get your auto attacks off faster. As a arms warrior, it's just going to let you pump more when you press that button. So it's essentially a DPS trinket again, like the orc, but instead of giving you attack power, it's giving you haste. Works super well for casters, and it even works for melee. You get your regeneration increased. It's negligible. You get a damage increase versus beast, again, very niche situation, but it's there. Increased critical strike chance with thrown weapons and bows. It's pretty solid, man. You're going to use a bow a lot of the time, trust me. So the increased crit with bows is actually pretty solid. Reduced durations of movement and parent effects. It's not a big deal in PvP, but it's there. It can help. It can throw people off sometimes, but yeah, it's not game changing, like I say. For PvE, 10/10. Honestly, if you're going to play a boomkin, a warlock, a mage, I prefer the casting speed over everything. I like the way it plays when the game's playing fast. You press the buttons. Sure, as an orc, your chaos bolt on a warlock's going to hit harder, but on a troll, I'm going to be pumping out the spells faster. So if you prefer the way that trolls look, definitely go a troll. If you prefer the way an orc looks, go the orc, man. It's all down to that. Alright, on to Blood Elves, guys, and as far as this race goes, the available classes are Warrior, Paladin, Hunter, Rogue, Priest, Death Knight, Mage and Warlock, leaving the only two unavailable classes being a Shaman and a Druid. Quick run over their ratios. You get an enchanting skill increase, it's just a minor. You can restore resources such as mana or energy, and you may silence nearby opponents. Now that is one ability on this, which is great. And you are also resistant to arcane damage. So the way that their main racial works is fantastic, honestly. So as a warrior, as an example, if you press it, you gain 15 rage, which will come in clutch a lot of times in PvP. You might need that 15 rage. It's going to boost up your execute damage, or it might be what you need to apply a hamstring. There's so many little niche situations where it could come in useful, and that's just like the side part of it. The main part is it's an AoE 2-second silence. That's huge. Like, you've got a lot of classes that don't have a silence, example warrior, example paladin, and as a rep paladin as well, rather than restoring 15 rage, it gives you 1 holy power. So if you're 2 holy power and you're holy power builders on cooldown, you can press that, silence them for 2 seconds, and that could be the Templar's verdict that finishes off the enemy. So they come in clutch in a lot of situations as melee. They're not so hot as ranged in PvP, because obviously as range, you're supposed to be ranged, right? You're not supposed to be in the person's face to be silencing them for 2 seconds. So they're not so hot in that regard. But as a warrior, a death knight, a paladin, a rogue, they're pretty solid picks in PvP, I'm not going to lie. In PvE, they're not great at all. They don't really bring anything as far as PvE goes. Now, let's look at Paladin as an example. On Horde, all you've got to pick for Paladin is Tauren or Blood Elf. With Blood Elf's racial, at least you're getting +1 holy power every time you can press it, whereas from Tauren, you're literally getting nothing apart from a stamina increase, so the Blood Elf would be a DPS increase over that. But these are very minor things. Again, if you like the way Blood Elf looks, play Blood Elf. I think they look dope, like something straight like some anime character. I think the run animation's nice. I think they look nice in all armor. They look great. The females look good as well, but we're down to the toothpick syndrome again, which kind of wrecks me. But if I'm going to play a caster for whatever reason as a Blood Elf, it's definitely going to be a female, and I'm going to melee a male. Great race for melee in PvP, not so hot for anything in PvE, and not so hot for casters in PvE. And we'll chuck Hunter in the caster group as well, because at 2-second silence, you can pull off some things again. But honestly, if you're playing a Hunter, you've got enough things to worry about in PvP without worrying about getting close to somebody as they come out of trap to silence them for 2 seconds. There's a lot going on with Hunters in this expansion, but we'll get into that in a future video. The available classes for this race are Warrior, Hunter, Rogue, Priest, Death Knight, Shaman, Mage and Warlock, leaving the only 2 unplayable being Paladin and Druid, which just kind of makes sense to me. As far as the ratios go, you've got a rocket jump that you can use. You can launch rockets at enemies, though these do share cooldowns. You receive vendor discounts, and the way this works is you receive a discount on items as if you've got the maximum reputation for the items that you're buying, which is actually surprisingly useful. You can summon a personal bank, which is pretty insane as well, honestly, to just be able to summon a bank. It's on a cooldown obviously, but it's not like a super hefty cooldown, and you can just summon your bank wherever and again, for a certain type of player, that's great. You get haste increase, and you get an alchemy skill and potion healing increase. This race has got a little bit of everything, and as well as that, you've got an option for mobility or extra burst damage, because the rockets hit, man. Like, it's not minor damage, it's noticeable enough that you notice that you've pressed it in with your burst or whatever. And as far as the rocket jump goes, it's given a class mobility that suffers from not having mobility, which is pretty great. Let's take a priest for an example. If you're a shadow priest, you have 0 mobility, you have literally nothing, and being able to press rocket jump is pretty fucking dope. You're given a class mobility that doesn't usually have mobility, or even better, if it's a class that already has nice mobility and you're given it extra mobility, like a hunter for example. Now, as far as PvP goes, is this a meta pick for any of the available classes? No, it is not. It's more of a fun pick. It's pretty dope. You can make some pretty cool plays with a rocket jump. I've seen some insane things done. So if you're that kind of guy that likes to play something that's not meta and you want to make plays with that pick, this race is brilliant for that. As far as PvE goes, is it meta for anything? It's meta for absolutely nothing again. But they look cool, man, and being able to stand in the boss mechanic for 2 seconds longer than everybody else, because you know that you can just jump out of it when it's about to hit using your rocket jump, is cool. And for casters and such, it's going to add that little bit of extra mobility to help you get around boss mechanics and stuff. I like them. I think they look cool. They sound cool. And the questing starting areas as well. Again, a future video coming on this. But the questing starting area for the Goblin and the Worgens are fucking amazing, man. They're really good. Blizzard did a solid job of them, and they really feel so much better than all the other races, which you'll see when you play. But that's it for the class and race guide, guys. To sum everything up, if you're a PvP player and you're playing on Alliance and you can play a human as the class that you desire to play, then you play a human. If you are PvE on Alliance, then you play whatever the fuck you fancy, because there's nothing in there that's really giving you that much of a boost. Worgens on top, it's the most meta thing you can play because of the crit chance, and the Draenei because of the hit percent chance, but these are very minor things that to me are not worth it for not liking the way that your character looks. And as far as Horde goes, if you're playing PvP or PvE and you can choose an Orc is the best way to go. Troll as well is a solid pick for PvP and PvE for any of the available classes, and Blood Elves come in solid as a melee in PvP for the 2-second silence duration. Also, you've got the Taurens with the War Stomp, which come in great for Druids. So it's a playstyle thing. It's about looking at everything. Choosing what class you want to play is one of the hardest things, but then choosing a race is pretty solid as well, because maybe you want to choose the race but you don't want to feel like you're at a massive disadvantage. And the only disadvantage realistically, in far as PvP terms go, is not playing a human or not playing an Orc, man, because these guys are solid compared to everybody else. I don't like that it is like that, but it just is like that. And that's the way it is. And if you can get over that, then you can play anything else. But just know that there are rank 1 gladiators in every single expansion since the beginning of World of Warcraft that run off meta picks and still do it. It is not going to make up for a huge skill difference. If you are on a warrior and you are a 2k rated warrior and you face a multi-rank 1 glad on his Draenei male warrior, he will annihilate you. Whether you've got 2 DPS trinkets or not, it is irrelevant. That guy is just far more skilled than you, and the ratios will not make up for the skill difference. What they will do is add a little bit of flavor, and to me that's what they should be there for. And in some cases they'll give you a little bit of a power boost like the humans or the Orcs. But thanks for watching, guys. If you like the video, please hit it with a thumbs up. Got any video ideas for any Cata future related content? If you've got any video ideas for future Cata content, please put it in the comments below. Give me as many ideas as you can. I've got a bunch for myself, but everything's welcome. If there's a video that you guys want to see that you can't find out there on YouTube, please put it there. Like I say, I've got thousands of hours on this expansion. I'm fairly knowledgeable about everything with the expansion, so any questions, pop them down in the comments, guys. I'll do my best to answer those as well. Hit with a thumbs up, subscribe if you're interested in future Cata content, and hit the bell notification. Cheers.